Welcome to the first Motorcycles or Drugs podcast. My name is Gary Boulanger. I'm here with Henri Boulanger, and we're in conversation with Interpol drummer Sam Fogarino.
Let's jump into music.
How are things on the West Coast? I hear you moving real fine. You wear those shoes like a dove. Now step those shoes, we'll go roaming in the night. Well, how are things on the West Coast?
Tell us about the new Interpol record. Now, when does it come out?
It comes out in July.
Comes out in July.
Matador, of course. I'm not sure exactly of the street date. There's no street dates anymore. Everything just drops, right? That's how it goes. It drops on. I'm not sure when it's dropping as of
The
yet.
new Interpol drop.
Yeah. But it comes out in July. I think first single will come out before that at some point. To London this time, first time leaving the country to record, to work with Flood, the producer Flood, who's done too many good records and really wide ranging too, from, Smashing Pumpkins to Depeche Mode to Nine Inch Nails to U2 and many, smaller, more underground or obscure bands. I mean, he's been one of my favorites for decades. And getting to work with him was just like, first, the last one was done with Dave Fridman. That was great in and of itself, but then this Flood is someone like that Dave Fridman would even enjoy being around, and probably conversing and talking tech with. Yeah. It was just attached to so much other music that I grew up on or, ended up loving later in life.
Having someone there like that is probably really, really vital.
It's exactly right, because he found a way to kind of hyperbolize everybody's part to like its maximum integral. Like that's the way I view it. Like the things that are really cool about each of us in a broad sense, the essence, where it was just like turned up to 10. So if there was a cool thing that you were maybe being a little reserved with, or kind of saving it to sprinkle out throughout the record, there's no full on all the time. It's still dynamic and everything, but it just seems like we were finally not afraid to take it to this next level, and it's not super slick or anything. It's kind of raw in places, to be honest. But where there is a little production, I think it's really, really creative and is really relevant to the band, like really makes sense. Nothing's taken out of context.
I think that peek into the process is something that even a lot of passionate music lovers might not know, that role of a producer. I think in some people's minds, it's all the band all the time. And the producer can be a lot of things, but to my understanding, they're there to kind of rally everybody, speak to each musician. And so how does that guide a record, if you could kind of give people some insight into that part of the process?
Well, that's very relevant today, because if you just say producer, you're thinking of, it could mean somebody who does electronic music or, a branch of hip hop or something. So when I talk about Flood, I like to usually preface it with record producer. Mm-hmm. So the more traditional, not somebody who's actually just another musician, maybe electronically based, or, a solo musician. Yeah, he is looking at the big grand picture and hopefully is 10 steps ahead of the band as to where it might go. And definitely he or she, they have the psychology down. That makes a really good producer too, is making sure nothing gets frayed in the process. Realizing that everybody's part is pretty precious. There's a lot of pressure. These are all the P's: pressure, precious, and posterity, and just knowing, how to deconstruct a song at times and throw it back together. at one point in time, we were the band that the record was rehearsed. We just went in and recorded it, and never really, most of the records were done without a traditional producer. We would get like a really good engineer and kind of blur the line. But there was no rearranging or, looking at the songs to see what makes them tick, and make sure they're on the right path in the past. But, that's exactly the way it happened with Flood.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had talked a little bit earlier, but expand on, what was it like writing remotely, creating music with the bandmates remotely prior to going into the studio?
Well, the first thing was, now, especially from my perspective as a drummer, when you're writing melody and harmony on a guitar, and you have a couple parts, like it'll kind of get there quickly, because you're just what the music is based off of, but it may not be so apparent, or there could be many different directions to take it rhythmically. And it sucks to like kind of not really find your way as soon as you want to. And it feels like there's impatience in the room, which I got used to over the years. You kind of realize that there's not impatience. It's you projecting that, because you just want to be up to speed. But the best thing about the remote process was that I didn't have that pressure. So I would get a file from Daniel that was like all guitar, wait for Paul to like throw down some bass or some counter melody, and then I would start my process. And, I could work the whole day and not really have anything ready to go, and nobody would know. And I wouldn't feel bad because I knew I still have time for the next day. And it was kind of cool just to be able to record every single thing that I did, to kind of fine tooth comb it and really not worrying about anybody else's process or what might be interrupted. And I think that probably was the same for everybody, really. So I think that was the best aspect. And then conversely, it sucked sometimes because if they were in front of me, there would be a dynamic change, you just kind of in the energy. And so the one thing that was a struggle was playing back to the same take of guitar and bass or whatever over and over again. So some days it was just like, I can't hear the song. Like I can't hear it anymore. But ultimately, I think the isolation was good. I mean, it kept me focused, kept me from just sitting on the couch, surfing YouTube. And it I think kind of really enforced the fact that there is this vague timeline that we need to keep on. So it was like going to the office every day. It wasn't ideal for the reasons I said, not being in person playing music is kind of weird, but it ended up proving to be a very functional process. Because then what would happen is at two different points, we ended up going upstate New York, renting a house for like 2 weeks and just playing everything that we'd recorded to kind of make sure that the energy is right, kind of resettle into how it's meant to be played together. I think the fact that we only did that like twice before going to London to record was great because everything felt super fresh. Although we'd worked on the bones of the song, the structure of the song for the better part of a year or maybe more. We were prepared, but there's still room for spontaneity. And it's like at the best part to where you got it down, but you could still be a little more experimental with it. And I think because you know it so well, it kind of gave you the confidence at least to try. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. You just go back to what you did. I like having that last bit of possibility open when we're about to record. It just, the process being elongated and being remote kept things fresh.
What does it look like for the band to be prepping for a tour? How much FaceTime are you getting to do that?
Well, I haven't seen those guys since I left London. We're just going to go to a proper rehearsal facility in New York for a week. And that aspect is a lot different because it's not very creative. It's very pragmatic, learning the parts of your songs. And then there's going to be, the addition of Brad Truax and Brandon Curtis, bass and keyboards respectively. So a whole new dynamic is going to be revisited with the full band, just getting together to rehearse and go play these songs that some of them we've been playing for years and some are new, but that's exciting. It's just a different, it's like the heavy lifting has been done. Now it's time to have some fun. Like this is all pure presentation. for the moment. It's all about the moment. So, and we could rehearse for 2 months, and at a certain point, you just got to go out and falter a little bit, or just kind of feel a little insecure to get it back.
That's
So
right.
you need a crowd. That's what you do. So,
Well, and as we were talking about with the pandemic, I think that you're going to find an eager crowd to see, feel, and experience and participate in a proper Interpol show.
it means something different this time around for everybody, and then the fact that, what Interpol does sonically just kind of ties into the emotional state, generally speaking, that everybody might have experienced at some, no matter who you were with, at what point in time, it got lonely. It felt isolated and lonely. And I think that is definitely reflected in Paul's lyrical approach, if not like definitely the melodic approach, the tone of the sound of the way he sings something, the tone he's taken. Yeah. I think it's going to be crazy to finally, kind of do that again when it felt like you may not be able to at one point.
There's been a lot of change, especially Sam, in your life and mine at our age, but you've witnessed the scene change in enormous ways since the 90s, including the rise of social media, right? What's been the biggest societal and cultural shift? And how do you keep up with things in the way that you feel are important to you?
Selectively, really. I tend to ignore a lot of sensationalism, or it's too much editorial out there. It's too much opinion right now. And I got to keep that at bay because I don't want to join that party. I don't want to just use any kind of social media platform just to vent. My voice wouldn't be that much different than anybody else's. I NPR, man, just like try to keep one source, and I've always been kind of self-isolating to begin with. So a lot of aspects of what we've been through didn't feel so much different. It was the fact that it was forced upon people that, made it scary or a lot worse than it actually was. So I don't really, aside from Interpol's activity on social media, I don't have any myself. And I think it's fun and more rewarding to seek out the information on something that's really interesting to you and or what's going to impact your life.
Right. Especially with the benefit of hindsight that we have pre-internet, living our lives pre-internet, living our lives pre-Spotify, music streaming.
Yeah.
That's another question I have, Sam, is, what impact has music streaming had on Interpol's income? It obviously places more importance on touring and merch, right?
Indeed. I mean, that's a good thing because Interpol's a live band.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know how everybody else in the band feels about this, but from my perspective, I didn't think we were ever going to make tons of money in royalties of sales, like sales royalties. You do good, it was never really a concern. What I was about to say is you do good on the road, you make sufficient income, better than average, and you take care of business and everything's fine, you're comfortable. So I never had this expectation that we were going to be millionaires off of, platinum records. That said, after, the whole streaming thing kind of hit the mainstream, then it was kind of really apparent that, we were never going to see royalties from physical sales again. And the way it works on Spotify and the different outlets is I don't even bother to look to see how many plays or how many times it's been played because it just doesn't amount to much. On the other hand, it's like, it's cool that it just reaches people,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wish I could make more off of every spin or download, whatever, stream. It's even confusing as to how it's, terminology for listening to something. I mean, that would be great, but it just doesn't matter. I'm just glad that people have access to the music and, our living's not being reduced or taken away. I think it'd be great because of having nothing to do with the people using those platforms, but people who control them are the ones who are fucked up.
That's fair. That's a fair statement.
Yeah. I mean, we're all going to take advantage of something if it makes it easier at one point or another. It's just the way it goes. It's human nature. There ain't no crime there. Certain artists are not really missing much if they take their music off of Spotify. It's not going to really affect like people like Neil Young and Taylor Swift can do that. We really can't do that. That would really shrink our fan base, it's just kind of curious as to why the head of Spotify would come up with his paradigm. And I'm like, what makes you any better than the worst record executive that ever lived?
Not much.
You know, it's really not much.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy because it's under the guise of like for the greater good access. And it's like, but you really don't give a shit about like some of these artists, if they made a little bit more money, they could make a living.
Yeah.
But the amount
that would be a beautiful thing, right?
yeah, and it's a it's a birthright. It's not taking money from people. There's a lot of work goes into writing one song and taking it to fruition. On the technical end and the creative end, it takes a lot of time, and some people have to work jobs on the side to be able to record some music and get it up online.
I was listening to a podcast you did with your friend Brian last year, and you had mentioned that you didn't leave your day job until partway through 2002 tour.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and you were in your 30s.
Yeah. That was like a leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
I just had to do it. It took me like, okay, I'm in my pushing my mid 30s. I delivered pizzas and drove forklifts and the crappiest jobs to make music. And now here's the opportunity, and the reality, comes like crashing down. You could let this go and probably hang yourself for doing so 5 years down the line. Missed all that you ever wanted. Here's the opportunity. Now it's time to work at it. Now the work really starts after the record deal. I could just throw that away, or kind of walk away from stability, being a partner from sweat equity in a thriving New York business with health insurance and vacation time. Yeah, it was pretty scary, because if I dedicate a couple years in Interpol and it just failed, like I'm not. What would I do? It would be, what am I going to do?
What was it about Interpol specifically that gave you the confidence to take that leap? Because I think a lot of people either believe in the music they're making, or, they get an opportunity. And especially nowadays where, like you said, there really aren't many guarantees. You could be famous the world over and still not be making money off of your music.
Yeah.
So what sort of compels you to go, this is the risk worth taking, or is it blind faith?
Well, it was a little blind faith, but it was their music. I mean, when I got the CD, which is awfully referred to as the Gray EP, and I've seen it on eBay for like $500 at this point. When I heard that, Daniel had given it to me. We'd met up to talk about me playing in the band, and I listened to it, and it was just apparent, because this was not only, it was music I wanted to hear, let alone play. I mean, it was kind of, the gift was being dropped from the universe into my lap. Like, finally, like at this point, this is, and even in other bands that I love playing, there was always something about rock music that kind of went off in the dreamy tangent, that really kind of created a sense of atmosphere. So, there's a lot of delay and reverb going on. And at that point, it's gearing up to be, rock and roll revival #2, with the New York tradition of just like straight up rock and roll being played drunk, So the Strokes were about to happen, and you could feel like that wave kind of coming, and which was fun because of what it did for New York. But I had been down that road. I wasn't interested. I wanted to be challenged, and I wanted to relate to the music on an intellectual level so I could play it really well. And that's what, I was just kind of blown away. And my wife at the time, we were working together at this clothing store. Before the store opened, I put the EP on, put it in the CD carousel thing. And she was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "It's my new band. Cindy, it's my new band." And she's like, "Shut the fuck up. Stop fucking with me." She's getting aggravated. And I really think she thought it was like some new touch and go band, or from some cool record label at the time, And I was like, "No, this is Daniel Kessler's band, Interpol. This is the band I am joining."
Damn.
Yeah.
That's kind of a magical experience, especially these days, because again, streaming positives and negatives, there's so much new music out. and it can be really overwhelming.
Man.
There's gems every day, and that's kind of the nice part about that access you were talking about. Yeah, in that moment of not only just finding music you love, but also going, holy shit, I get to be a part of this. And
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed like if I could have constructed the band I wanted, maybe it wouldn't have sounded exactly like Interpol. I don't want to say that I had some kind of cosmic responsibility,
mhm,
but it would have been close to that if I could have cherry picked, if I could have essentially produced the band that I wanted to be in, it would have been very, very on the mark of Interpol. It needed to be guitar bass because that's fun as a drummer, and just again, like, staying outside of the rock and roll trappings and just really creating this otherness. It just really, music you could daydream to.
yeah,
It just really got me off for sure. In a
nice.
non-sexual way. It just really blew me away, and I was kind of dumbfounded as to when I heard it. It was almost like I had this very frenetic kind of anxious energy. Like, I got to make this happen, like right now. I got to just make sure my position is procured and secured because I need it and they need me. And it kind of happened. I mean, I can still vaguely remember these early rehearsals, and I think they're tests for me. Aside from, I had some songs given that I had to learn, so it's kind of the set that they were playing at the time. And then they were working on the song that became Specialist. And I had no drum part because they wrote it after their previous drummer had quit. And when I played it, they kind of laughed at me because they were like, that's it. Like, how did you do that? Like, wow.
It's
I
just
mean,
good
barring a
chemistry
couple
right off the
little
bat.
chemistry and just knowing, like, I think they kind of expected to have to laboriously explain what they're looking for. Even with seasoned musicians, sometimes ones that try to explain a drum part that really don't know what they
Yeah.
want is this, like, man, it'll drive you nuts, you
Yeah.
know?
I'm a drummer as well. So
Okay, so
it really speaks to me because I got lucky with some guys I was playing music with way back in high school, where I joined their band, and it wasn't that magical experience of, oh, this is the music I want to hear. They were essentially a Blink-182 ripoff band, and it was fun and there was energy to it, and I was drawn to that. But the music, as I was in the band and started writing with them more, I was pushing it more in this different direction away from that and trying to get it a little more complex and fun and nuanced. And yeah, it's that chemistry you kind of talk about, that it's this connection that I thought was fairly standard, because pretty early on in my musicianship, I found those guys, or I had other people I played with, and jamming for me meant, yeah, that magical experience of getting in a room and playing stuff and almost telepathically knowing what the other person wants and changing it up at the right moments, and everyone's laughing.
yeah,
And then I tried jamming with other people and realized, oh, holy shit, that's not normal. That's not the baseline experience necessarily.
exactly. I remember experiencing that when I was a teenager because I learned how to play with some friends. I learned how to play drums as a drummer in this band that we put together. So we were all learning our instruments at the same time. And aside from that, is like, we were already friends, and it just made it kind of easy. It was just kind of happening. And of course, it was pretty naive too, but realizing that when you start working with people that you don't really know that well on many different levels, everything is a challenge in terms of your communication with them and trying to understand when somebody's being sarcastic or facetious,
Yeah.
or is actually pissed off, or are they going to get your humor, and like all the different variables.
It
And
goes beyond the music in a lot of ways that
you kind
aren't
of,
apparent,
exactly, it's some real social surgery,
Yeah.
that's happening, getting to know
Ego as
everybody.
well. Like if someone's having a bad day, or if they're not quite getting a part, and you can feel patience levels dwindling, and managing that as well. I found myself to kind of be a bit of band dad at times, and kind of
Yeah.
running rehearsals from the drum throne, and kind of like, all right, guys, let's just jump into this one. But I want to talk about Empty Mansions. You're talking about,
Oh yeah.
if you could, back when you joined Interpol, like, this is the band I would make. Well, you made a band, you made a project
Yeah.
back in Rome, along with Brandon, Interpol's other motorcyclist, actually.
Yeah.
heavily inspired by postmodern fiction and the neo-Western series Justified.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. Tell us about Empty Mansions. Is that your first solo project beyond Interpol?
Second, but like it's my first time like writing all the music
Cool.
and doing the quote unquote singing.
I thought you did a great job. We were jamming out while we were getting the questions in order and kind of listening through some stuff.
Thanks. I mean, I think, I'm definitely not embarrassed of that record at all. In hindsight always really shows you your weaknesses, and it'd be fun maybe one day to kind of work on, kind of reintroduce it. But that just kind of took me over, and when I realized like I have to see it through, like I've been investing a lot of time in this. And that's when I kind of, asked Brandon to kind of take a look at some things. We were on the road with Interpol. And then it was just like, there was just no way to turn back. And it was a very cathartic process.
Yeah.
And I think that at the moment that might have been more important than the sound of my voice or something. What suited me at the time was, the sonics of it. There would be no sense in like doing Baby Interpol,
Sure. Yeah.
and it would be really easy to subconsciously lean in that direction because I'd been around it so long. So there was just this like sonic heaviness that I wanted to convey, and strapping on a guitar and, not being I'm still not a very good guitar player. There was just something about it that just felt right. And Brandon jumped on board. And then the next thing you know, Dwayne Dennison agreed to play on some songs. And it was like, oh, wow. Well, if Dwayne and Brandon are invested, then I can't think this sucks because they don't suck. So I was like, oh, shit, now I have to deliver.
Good strategy.
And, unfortunately, it just wasn't enough money or time to really, kind of came out of the box okay, but quickly just lost its steam. And as is very typical of a small little record label, and I really could only, at a certain point, I had to stop thinking about it because I had to go back to work with Interpol. The sad thing, it's a little tangential, but originally it was going to come out. Interpol was signed to a different record label in Europe at the time, and the A&R man there was just going to put out my record because he trusted me. I was like, I'm doing this thing, and has Brandon, Dwayne Dennison, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you want demos? He's like, no, I trust you.
Damn.
I don't have time for that. But then he left the label, and he told me, they could put it out, but I'm going to be gone once it's released. And I was like, I have no interest in that because that's just pointless. And, it might have been a different story because it was a proper record label that had really good resources. And, Vincent, with his name, French man, he understood. I mean, it was just like, he knows what to do. He knows the limitations of this music. So it wouldn't have been like singles and that kind of thing in videos. It would have been a concentration on getting it to the people that would sympathize with it or empathize with it. Yeah. And, there's all the rock and roll kind of pitfalls, music industry pitfalls in this little story. Because then that's when it took away a lot of steam when Vincent and he wasn't going to another record label like straight away. So it wouldn't have been like he could have taken it with him. Like he didn't know what he was doing at that time. And so I just settled on this very small record label that was based out of Indiana. And, the guy who ran the label definitely had heart and integrity, but, it just at that point in time, he just needed a certain kind of push that it didn't have.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lyric I really liked from it that I think speaks to all of this before we move on to motorcycles. It's from The Former You off of Snakes, Vultures and Sulfate. And it's, don't care if it makes no sense to keep on trying, which is repeated over and over throughout the song. And I found that to be really hopeful. And it kind of sounds like from how you speak of Empty Mansions, that was kind of the ethos almost.
That was that's the truth. That's it in a nutshell. We're working on that song, and I knew I didn't want it to be like a typical verse chorus, although there's not many choruses on that record at all. I just didn't want it to be a common song format. It just has these two parts, and I kept trying to find something too clever. And Brandon would always say, yeah, what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah.
And I kind of spoke that phrase, and he's like, there's the lyric. And then we just kind of went in and winged it. But that's like my mantra, really. I mean, I had learning disabilities growing up, I have functional mental issues, these days. And if I took the traditional route in anything, I'd fail miserably. And I always had to, kind of be faced with this resistance that, like, you don't know how to do this. You don't get it, and it'd be like, I do. I just don't know how to do it the way you do. Just let me show you the end result. Forget about the process.
Especially with creative stuff, I feel like that line kind of gets trotted out where there is a right and a wrong way, and maybe it's a byproduct of school or the way people were taught. But that's always been a kind of odd sentiment to me, especially when it comes to creative things, is that, like, you're not doing it right. I'm like, well, let's see what happens at the end of this, and let's see what we come out with.
Exactly, what's right,
feels, how it resonates.
I mean, somebody like, I could eat a hot dog, right, while you're having like some Wagyu burger that costs $50, and we could both have the same reaction. And I really couldn't, take away from your experience, nor you could take away from mine, even though I'm eating this Ostermeyer thing that God knows what's in it that I probably wouldn't eat anyway. But the case in point is we could be, equally thrilled over these experiences that, we're not eating the same thing, but we're still feeling the same thing, or what that is to us. So, Gary could be a big Katy Perry fan and go, I love Interpol and I love Katy Perry. I love seeing her on stage and it thrills the fuck out of me. Who's to say, Gary, where did your taste go? It's just that, it's just an opinion.
I think I have a lot more energy and calm in my life after I sort of recognized a know-it-all tendency in my younger years, and just kind of went, I don't need to speak on 99% of a lot of the ways, especially when it's kind of like the don't yuck someone's yum. Like, if someone likes something, it's not hurting anyone. For the most part, you can just save yourself a lot of energy just being like, yeah, all right, man. Like,
oh yeah, being excited for someone else's appreciation of music in general. I'm not a big rap or hip hop fan. Huge David Bowie fan. And he went all over the world and back again. Heroes is my favorite song. And yet you see where he went and what he was doing in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was open to everything. And because of my appreciation for Bowie and what he's produced, it's always opened my mind. I mean, ours is a household, Sam, ever since day one, before the kids were born, there's always music playing. And it's a mix of everything. Right. Maybe not so much hip hop or rap, obviously, or country, new country. Right. But that's the sound. We have a continuous soundtrack in our household. And that has played a big part, I know, in Henri's life. But it makes you a good conversationalist, makes you a good listener, because when you have music on, you're listening to it.
You're listening, yeah.
Right? And picking out the nuances and, gosh, there's so many things that like you guys were talking about with that lyric, I find music to be very hopeful, even the navel gazing stuff. Right.
It is. Yeah, I do. Yeah. And the funny thing is, hope doesn't have to be like pre-happiness. It could be very melancholic because you're in the middle, hopeful, maybe you have a chance to get somewhere where the light is shining brighter, but it's coming from a perspective where things are kind of shaded, a little gray, if not still dark. And that's what I hear a lot with Paul on this record is there's still that quintessential Interpol thing, this kind of longing, and this kind of speaking through a filter of introspection and melancholy and depression sometimes. But there's a lot of hope on this record, just the way he is, kind of changed it up and has grown as a, mature man himself. It's all still there, but like the perspective is different. But I love I would have had fun growing up in your house. Although,
and it was nice.
And I've never had really a proper turntable until a couple of years ago, just because, as we were talking, music became very portable. Sony Walkman cassettes that transitioned to CDs, right?
Yeah.
And LPs, we moved around quite a bit over the last 25 years, and you really can't or don't want to lug around a bunch of vinyl. So to finally be settled in the same place for now 15 and a half years, almost 16 years.
Could finally put down some musical roots, as it were.
That's right. Yeah, in the form of vinyl.
That's right.
That's funny. I did the same thing kind of I have the same path with that. Like when I was a kid, I had a bunch of albums, that's the way it was. But then, as you get a little older and you're moving around and stuff, and I didn't want the material, like just grabbing a box of CDs, and then eventually just having stuff on your computer was a lot more appealing. But now that I'm planted, going anywhere, I started buying records in the past. I guess I started buying records again in the past, 13 years, but I've had a renewed kind of interest again in kind of expanding or kind of revisiting my LP catalog.
Sam, we'd be remiss if we weren't to talk about motorcycles, because
Yeah,
that's a big part of this blog's or this podcast name. So when I say motorcycles are drugs, how do you interpret that?
Oh, man. Well, it is not unlike music. If the bug bites, you're infected. I mean, it's even for someone like me who's not riding. I mean, I don't even have a running bike right now, but it's still in my blood. You know what I mean? It's if it's there, it's going to explode. Because it's just like music. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle. There's so much parallel the art of motorcycles. I mean, what's been happening in the past decade with a lot of co-ops popping up and people learning how to work on their own bikes and maybe modify their own bikes, and what's happening with design of motorcycles. It's mind blowing how like that just blew up, where you don't have to settle for what's on the retail floor. If you want to modify something or have something built to your specs, that speaks to, what I like about aesthetics and design. So there's that aspect, it's tied to fashion. You know what I mean? I mean, motorcycle jackets.
Oh yeah.
Cafe racer jackets, the old school MC jackets, engineers boots, just the culture that's been appropriated in like punk rock or, like alt music, like that whole genre, whether a lot of people are aware, they're so tied to something that was born out of a different obsession. And just all the different modes of riding a motorcycle, what it could be, or in terms of the sport, the flat track, fucking Which one? British. Wait, no, it's in Britain. The crazy race.
The Isle of Man.
Isle of Man. I was confusing a music festival. I mean, just things of that nature, Grand Prix, and there's just so much.
There's so many entry points.
So many entry
there's
points.
There's a place for everybody, no matter what the interest is, and that's, I think, another thing. Music, motorcycling, different stuff. That people find something in motorcycling on the outside. It's like the kind of this monolith, but it's so much more varied than that. You used to hang out at Georgia Motorcycle Co-op, Bedlam Works.
Yeah. That was I really missed that period. And sadly, they ended up going out of business, which really put a hampering on being able to ride.
Yeah, it's a community aspect.
Yeah, and it just all of a sudden was gone. It's just gone.
Was that a 2020 thing or
2019?
Oh, pre-pandemic.
Yeah, just pre-pandemic.
Oh, geez.
And it could have been such the right time, because when I discovered Bedlam Works, I was in between records, and instead of doing something like Ampy Mansions, I decided to not work on any music outside of Interpol. But I can't just sit around. No.
I got to obsess over something.
Oh, totally. My myopathy does need a direction. It needs a channel. And there's just motorcycles. Why not?
What'd you get up to there? What were the projects you got to work on?
Okay, I had this. Oh man, it was like an 81 XT250. I forget what I was going to do with it, but I remember it didn't end well.
No.
I forget what the modification was going to be, but I hit like an impasse and then bought an XT500 in mint condition. That was just like really need much modification. I had to convert it to 12-volt system. It still had its 6-volt stuff.
And that's an Harley, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Yamaha. It was a XT500. It's like one of the first enduros. It's very early thumper period.
I was thinking of the XG 500 from Harley.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was it had a kind of white and then stainless steel tank,
Oh, cool.
really big, fat shock absorbers in the back. And, it was pretty, had some power. It was could definitely ride around town with it with no problem. But, I changed the big old headlight and tail light, and the big, turn signals, and got really small, discrete LED ones so I could take it on some trails and stuff. So that, kind of quelled the pain of failing my first project. And then I started to rebuild an Yamaha XR 250 that I never got to finish. I kept having some electrical system issues.
Those are the worst.
Yeah.
They're maddening.
Like needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And it's a simple machine. There's only a couple leads to worry about, but there's no spark. What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
And, when Bedlam Works closed, that really kind of killed it, because I've done as much as I can diagnostically.
Yeah.
But, it's in my shed now. So it's not dead. But I think after this next Interpol tour, when I'm finished, I'm going to buy a brand new bike.
Like a new bike?
I am going to buy a brand new bike.
Oh, tell us what your wish list includes, Sam.
Well, Ducati Scrambler is kind of up there because I'm like a brat scrambler guy. I kind of dig that. I don't need much trail action these days. It would be fun to get on some packed dirt or something, or kind of get off the road, but I'm not going to hit the trails or go on a track. So aesthetically, I think they're just amazing. And then I think about like a BMW 9 Series. What I actually had the opportunity to ride in, we played a motorcycle festival outside of Berlin back in 2018. And, BMW is one of the sponsors, and any of the artists playing could take one out for a ride. So it was an R9. It was kind of like the urban, I don't remember the exact sub model. It was kind of like the urban trim. Man, it's that, white tank with a couple different shades of blue and some red splashed in there. And that thing just drove itself. It rode itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's this it's so comfortable, and it feels so, aside from what could happen if you get hit by a bigger vehicle, otherwise, like going over potholes, taking sharp turns, anything that could, be a little squirrely on a lesser bike, it didn't happen. I mean, I felt like I could steer it with one pinky and just kind of lie back. It just had crazy center of gravity and was so smooth and fast. And, that was the scary thing. Like, it kind of can just, because it's not hard to ride.
Yeah.
You don't feel the pressure changing,
Yeah. You're coming from older bikes too, which you can really rip on those and still be within a certain realm of risk. And then you hop on something modern, and all of a sudden, it's real easy to go real fast. Yeah.
It just kind of happens. But they're quite expensive. But that's kind of, that's a different option there. Mm-hmm. And then I like the newer Moto Guzzi's too.
They're pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I just bought a 2000 Moto Guzzi Quota.
Not familiar with that model.
And it's a pretty unique bike. It's an adventure bike. So picture the Italian tractor, power plant with upright bars, longer travel. It was a friend of mine who works at Livewire, and he loves Italian bikes. He always wanted one. He got a bee in his bonnet about buying a 62 Harley Sportster in San Diego a couple Saturdays ago. He pinged me at 6 a.m. to say, I gotta flip my quota this weekend only. Here's the price. And I went, oh, and I've owned 3 Moto Guzzis. So then I just showed it to my wife, Jean, and she looked at the picture and she went, you should get it. So first of all, everyone listening should wish and pray and hope that they had a partner that just said, you should get it. And when they say that, don't say, really? Just grab the cash and go. And the Moto Guzzis, I can say, are not easy bikes to ride, but it's like a bucking bronco at times, but you feel like you're part of the bike. They're so easy to work on. There are aftermarket accessory and parts resellers. I think there's one kind of closer to the country, Harper's Moto Guzzi. think it might be in Missouri, but I use an outfit in Wisconsin called MG Cycle in Albany. And Henri and I have shared, it was a 2004 V11 Sport Bellabio, kind of a street fighter.
Yeah.
That was okay. It cornered like a rectangle, but now we have a 2011 California Black Eagle Cruiser. And I sold Henri my 2004 California Stone last year that has had a lot of wonderful experiences. So I can honestly, personally say and endorse Moto Guzzi's.
That's kind of nice. You meet a lot of people generally like on the street, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, especially in this part of the world. New York, I saw a lot of them on the street parked, wherever. My first girlfriend in New York was a G1000. Is that correct? It was a Guzzi, probably late 70s, early 80s. I mean, her tips of her toes could reach the ground. That was it. We were in Manhattan and she's like, you want to come back to my house? Here's your helmet. And I was like, oh, you have your bike here. This is great. And then I saw how big it was. And I was like,
yeah, looking at it, that is not a small bike.
Oh, man. And she was a petite woman too, but she could ride. She knew what she was doing. And we were going over the Manhattan Bridge at 80 miles an hour. And I was like, I think I'm in love.
I might die, but
best. The only thing that could make this better if I was riding the bike, myself. But that was kind of cool that this woman that I was dating is riding this, commanding this motorcycle over the Manhattan Bridge.
That's very attractive to me. Jean's had 4 bikes in less than 3 years. And she's currently on a 2020 Triumph Speedmaster, which is a cruiser. And we've been together 36 years, and she's gotten sexier and sexier ever since she chose to be on her own bike.
Yeah.
And the costumes you can get, there's this motorcycle clothing manufacturer down in LA, Stellar Moto. Our friend Jenna owns it and designs everything. And she outfits the ladies so wonderfully.
That's nice.
Because it's what you were talking about earlier, Sam. When you're on a bike, there's a fashion element, there's a danger element, there's a satisfaction element, but it's also you get to wear a costume.
Oh man, it's
right.
Important. Yeah.
And cyclists wear costumes too, but it's almost like they're wearing lingerie with a foam bucket on their head. That's cool. Been there, done that. But being a motorcyclist, the costume choices.
No, it's sexy.
Yeah.
For both guys. I mean, it's
a capability and independence. And there's I stand straighter when I'm wearing a motorcycle jacket. You go out in the world and you feel it's the exact opposite of the feeling I get when I wear flip-flops, right? You feel like anything can come at you and you're gonna be
vulnerable,
fine.
Man.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's literally a layer of protection,
mm-hmm.
literally and metaphorically. Totally.
Yeah.
All the ease.
So in the past, you've described yourself as mechanically dyslexic. I'm really curious how that plays out when you're either changing something on the bike or something on the bike breaks and needs fixing.
It has to happen twice.
Okay.
If I'm doing it, I just really resign myself to the fact that, number one, if I'm angry, if I'm
mm-hmm.
feeling frustrated, don't do it.
That's a good rule.
Yeah.
So, especially for me, because I have to it's not a second nature. It's not like playing drums where I'm going to use my approach. You can have your approach as a mechanic, but it's within certain confines. This is empirical. The engine works this way.
Yeah.
You can't go, well, I'm going to create this esoteric vibe.
Yeah.
Redefine combustion. No, you're not. It's just not good. So that part, the musician part, kind of whimsical, do it my way, kind of has to really hyper focus. And sometimes, I'm cool, everything. But if it gets kind of technical, changing piston rings or something like that, cleaning out the carburetor, like I have to really it has to be like a child is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to, because there's a lot of moving parts and they're all small and nothing can get dirty and things of that nature. Because I will just put things backwards, or
it's easy to do.
It is. And I have the tendency to kind of be in weird positions. I'll lean over the bike and do something upside down instead of coming around to the proper side and kneeling.
It's that tunnel vision in the midst of it.
And, I used to get made fun of in, brotherly way at Bedlam all the time. Like, come on, so Sam, like, there's a bench. Come on, sit down on the
Yeah.
bench. Okay, in front. There you go. Oh, it's called a lift, Sam. The
Mhm.
bike's on a lift. Why don't you just lift it now?
Yeah.
And then, but it would be that like I gotta hurry up and get, and then between like these ADHD and dyslexia, like looking past what I need to backwards.
Yeah.
You know.
I had my own version of Bedlam here in the Bay. It's a place called the Garage of Silicon Valley. It's rad. It's been around for 6 years now under various names. And it was also a DIY, sort of like a motorcycle co-op, full for a while. And then they shifted over to being more of a shop. And I was going there, and I actually ended up working as a mechanic for about 10 months. And
Oh, wow.
everything you're saying still holds true. You'd work on it and you wouldn't have the lift raised, and you're like, why does my back hurt? You'd go home at the end of the day, and you're right, there is kind of the empirical, it's so different from art in that way.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how tough that would be to actually transition into that mindset of, no, there's a right way to do it. And not only is there a right way to do it, now you're working on someone else's bike, and if you mess it up, the stakes are incredibly high. You won't just mess up the song, you're going to mess up someone's femur potentially. And
Yeah.
it's
Or whether you're going to hurt their baby.
exactly, and it's
Yeah.
wild where your mind has to go to sort of, or even you're saying there's not different approaches to it, and the scary thing is there are, and some of them people are very confident about, and they're still incredibly wrong. It's
Yeah, I guess there's shortcuts.
mind-numbing.
Yeah, you could, kind of do the half-baked version.
Yeah.
The thing that I loved about the co-op was that there was mechanics on staff. That was their main business.
Nice.
So it really had the safety net. And then, of course, I ingratiated myself. And they gave me a key to the, I paid my rent for my little space, but I got along with them so well. They treated me like I worked there. So I can go there when it was closed. Like, they totally trusted me. So instead of like the allocated, 1 hour a week with them, ask the mechanic a question, they just did shit for me if it was out of my skill set, or if I didn't feel, I didn't change the alternator on the dyno on the XT500 because it's just like timing involved. Like, I don't want to ride it now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to have to do all the diagnostics and make sure everything. Just wanted to be right. He could tell me how he did it later. I could learn after the fact. Yeah.
And there's so
But it
much
was
to
just like-
learn, right? Like, you can learn that, but when are you going to do that again? So why struggle for 3 days?
As you found, Henri, that was almost your full-time focus. And I've noticed artists, you can have several creative outlets. You can paint, you can draw, you can do wire sculpture, you could sing, you can act, all these different things. And you're using a lot of the same mental and physical hand-eye coordination and then certain part of your brain,
intuition, whatever else.
And you get to that point by mastering with repetition. But when you get to motorcycles, like, well, you could be working on a 52 Vincent or a 78 Harley or a 2020 Triumph, T100, and you're expected to kind of know all the inner workings.
Even changing a wheel from one brand to the other can be a completely different experience, and it's a lot. Like, I think we tie a lot of capability, and there's like these sort of emotions we attach to motorcycle maintenance or just maintenance in general that are very skill based, and that person really knows what they're doing, but it's such an unrealistic expectation. I think
it's kind of weird. It kind of goes across different kinds of cultures too, like cooking. You get into cooking, and all of a sudden you want to convey yourself as like a chef, and that's why I kind of don't. I wouldn't call myself a mechanic. Yeah, it's just like no, because there's no way you could become a great chef at home in a week. There's so many different, different types of fare, and tools of the kitchen. That whole is just like vast. And I remember getting to know Mario Batali way back when, and he hit it home that there's so much to know. He knew everything about every aspect of cooking and food. Why, how is white asparagus white asparagus? And you go, well, Sam, they pull it out of the ground before the pigment turns green or something to that effect. There's just something that you just never know.
Because he needs to know it when it's in the pan, and he needs to know it's got less acid, so it's going to do this. Or
And
there's a reason to it all that he gets from that experience.
And that's stuff like if you're going to make something at home, you're really not going to be concerned with. It's the same with audio engineering too. And that's why with certain things on motorcycles, I'm just going to leave because ultimately I want to ride the bike. Like it's really cool to be able to work on the bike, and maybe do some modifications. But ultimately, it's about riding the bike. That's what the obsession is. And I think you could get definitely sucked into the superficial end of the culture to where like you need to be knowing how to fix, you want to be talking about how you changed piston rods the other day, and it's like, no, you don't.
I'm very comfortable admitting how much I don't know. That was a survival skill for me was I don't know how to do this, and I'm going to get help before I break something or hurt somebody or hurt myself. Like that humility was, for better or for worse, very core to what I had to do just to sort of go through that because you commit to it pretty hard and you realize, I don't know, it's knowing something is infinitely more than nothing. And I think if someone doesn't work on cars and motorcycles, being able to twist a screwdriver is godlike. They're like, I couldn't even imagine doing that. But then the second you step over that, there's so much.
Yeah. And the thing that bummed me out is like I found myself not riding as much as I wanted to be.
Me too.
And that's why I mentioned like this time around, when I'm finished with this tour, I'm going to get a brand new bike. I'm not going to get something that needs to be rebuilt or that I want to redesign or, kind of.
Or feel inclined you need to customize and do certain things to, appreciate what the BMW R9T or the Moto Guzzi, V85 TT or what have you offers off the showroom floor. Cause you can certainly customize it, but you're not having to bend metal and pull out a wire harness and
you're going to get well-made, prefabricated, aftermarket accessories for your bike that are bolt-on. Thank you. And
yes,
he's great. And
those magic words, bolt-on.
I like my two favorite, universal and bolt-on.
Exactly. Well, universal was, oh my God, that was the bane of my existence because someone would come in with, this is a universal part. And I would look at the bike they bought it for and be like, no, it's not. We have to bust out the Dremel tool and we got to, do a couple other things. But you mentioned earlier, or you've said in the past anyway, you try to keep motorcycles and music separate, especially when you're on tour. You don't bring a bike with you. It's kind of this, you kind of keep your obsessions apart. At least for me, I found a lot of parallels between playing drums specifically and riding motorcycles. There's full body engagement. Everything demands your attention. Every appendage is doing something and there's momentum, but they're so similar. And yet you do keep them separate. So tell us a little bit about that.
I think, it's my attention span too. I think if the bike was in one of the bays on the bus, I'd be overly preoccupied and I would forget why it's on the bus. Because it's on the bus because I'm working, so it's a forced discipline thing. Or I would bring it out and never ride it. And it would have costed me X amount to get it to point A, to get it on the bus and bring it back here, So it has a lot to do with knowing my inner workings and what my bad habits are. It's part of my neuroses, and I was on tour. We were out on the road with Blonde Redhead. Let me look at the tour poster. It's right over there. This is a good, it's over 10 years ago. The drummer, his name is Simone Pace from Italy, two brothers from Italy in that band. And he brought out like, it was either, I think he had a little Guzzi with him. It was like a little 125, like from 1962. And I was so jealous. Because it just looked like so much fun. Like he's done with sound check. Just opened the bay of the bus. He has his riding jacket on, his helmet ready to go. Could ride it right off the bus. And he takes this great, tour of the town that you're in. Cool small town.
Great way to take in a new place on two wheels.
Yeah. Oh, it's romantic as hell. And it was beautiful weather. And then I knew that I wouldn't be able to do it like he did. I would be late for sound checks or the opposite, or just end up wasting some effort to get it out there. And I think too, I don't know, like my time at Bedlam, like I did put music, I was able to not work on anything, because I needed to find a different means of inspiration and kind of just recharge my batteries, no pun intended. And it's just kind of how I roll. It's like I'm gonna obsess, whether it's Interpol or working on stuff that I do on my own music wise, or it's gonna be all about bikes. And that's the beauty, because I'll have the time to do it too. So it won't be like I'm just gonna concentrate on a month to ride my bike and keep it clean and kind of get some cool gear to wear. No, it's like it's over a year. I could really base things around owning a motorcycle, like where I go, and when I go, and things of that nature.
Make it very intentional.
Yeah, it does. And it's down to the inner wiring here. People ride their bikes to work, and it's not about culture, it's about conveyance. And they would probably look at me like I'm crazy, but it's the way my life is lived professionally. It's on the cycle. Like I'm on the clock for over a year, but then I clock out and it's shut off. There's nothing happening. So it just kind of creates this unique period of time that I could define.
What is your favorite Interpol album?
The one that's about to come out.
Ooh.
It's
Good
always
answer.
the newest record.
Has that been the case for you?
It's kind of not even a part of the answer, but
yeah,
you usually do like the thing you worked on the most, and I think you should. You shouldn't be like, oh, this doesn't sound as good as the last one, or I'm not vibing with it. So yeah, you're always most proud of what you just accomplished. But I think there is something about this record too. It feels like a transition has occurred, and it's not like the band got a total facelift and you won't recognize it. I think there was a natural progression that transpired going through the whole COVID period, after finishing the tour for Marauder to now. I mean, it definitely feels like all the components are still there. It still sounds like Interpol, but there's something different about it. And you'll have to decide that to see if you guys kind of empathize with what I'm saying or agree.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed the evolution so far. I think personally I have the most attachment to Love to Admire.
Oh wow, that's the one I got critically slammed the
What?
hardest.
I do not understand that. Maybe it was just because it was the first one I found at the library, like flipping through the CDs, and I thought the cover was so cool and evocative.
It was fun, yeah.
But yeah, that one I think I know every beat, every rhythm, every lyric. I put it on, just kind of went through the discography, and that one I was like, holy shit, I still remember.
Oh, the
all
memories,
this.
I'm sure that flood back.
Yeah, flooded back. All of a sudden I was in 2008 and riding my bike around and listening to that and singing along. But I'm curious what your favorite Interpol song to play live is.
There's a couple. Well, off of that record, and not just because we mentioned it, but the song Mammoth is really, really fun to play. There's something about the energy, and I remember writing that song with being a part of the writing process, I would say, and Paul and I kind of agreeing to what the music kind of conjured in your brain, and that's how the term Mammoth, because it just felt like the song has big feet and they're stomping the ground, this big monolithic thing. So I like that one a lot. Not Even Jail is fun to play. It's just something that is really, it's a quintessential live song when we're all on the same plane and we hit the same stride. It's like, it's fun. It's magic. And I think people can tell.
When personality is scarred, it's you. It travels south with disuse. I'm subtle like a lion's cage. So
guess, it's one of the ones we've been playing the longest time. It's off the first album. Like Obstacle One is fun.
Mm-hmm. Does that still get a big reaction out of the crowd?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny, a band that hasn't really we're not like as familiar as Coldplay or something, but you can tell like what people like. There are the hits, and Obstacle One is one of them.
People probably have a deep connection to it being around as long as it is.
Yeah.
The same with me, it takes you back to that time. I think music can do that.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah.
So instantaneously, and people really resonate. I'm sure people are excited to come out and see you guys live again. That's going to be really fun for you and them.
Yeah, it is. Nervous excitement is bubbling under.
Sam, are you able to tell us the name of the new record?
I think I can.
We'd love if you would.
Well, I mean, if I'm not supposed to, I didn't get that memo. So,
and we can always, if we need to, we can add a harsh beat right over it.
Well, people are going to find. What if and it's called The Other Side of Make Believe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Whimsical.
Yeah.
It does have like a hopeful that it's got like a almost childishness to it.
Yeah, it is. It does have this kind of juvenile, like wide-eyed.
Yeah. Hopefulness.
Yeah. I don't. Sometimes too. I when you say it out loud, it's like the other side of make believe is brutal.
Yeah. Well, true. Yeah.
It's like pulling back the curtain with the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Right. And the other side of make believe, Guillermo del Toro, Pan's Labyrinth. Okay. Make believe can probably scare the living shit out of you if you saw what's behind it. Right.
Yeah.
Truth, horror, emotion.
Yeah.
Adulthood.
That's the one right there, boys.
That's exciting.
Bang. Adulthood, parenthood.
Yeah.
There's a lyric off the record that always it's fun to take some of Paul's lyrics out of context, but he at one point he's like, I don't know if it's too, and I couldn't remember what he said, the term he used, but just like kind of negative or kind of ugly. And lyric is, roll up the window, you might get stolen. And he's with the song basically, and I hate explaining his lyrics, but from just the song's called Renegade Hearts, and it appears to have that kind of romantic, lovers out, they're going, and the song does kind of evolve into this kind of, you could picture yourself riding your bike through like Death Valley or open expanse. It just has that kind of romance to it, and the rhythmically it just kind of really lends itself. It'd be great to listen to on the bike while you're riding. But that lyric, roll up the window, you might get stolen. I kind of view it as like, man's possessiveness, like nothing can happen to you. So roll up that damn window. I don't know why I brought that up, but
also ironic on a motorcycle inspired podcast talking about windows.
Yeah, right.
Like, what are those?
Right.
What is this window?
It's for those dorks who still drive cars.
Yeah.
Last question, Sam. Speaking of being safe, as a lifelong career musician, do you ever ponder what life would be like if you were instead a 9-to-5er with a steady paycheck, healthcare, and a practical vehicle in the driveway?
I couldn't. I wouldn't have survived. I can't. I mean, it could have happened. I was on that path, but I opted out. It was like, I'll just live poverty level until I know that I can't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing I'd want to do. I don't have anything that I would have wanted to do. And to think about at this point, I'm 53. Like I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I can think of the worst. I probably would have become a junkie or something, like look for escapism. If my life wasn't going the way I wanted to, I would have had to block out the truth because I couldn't go work in an office. Or I think I couldn't do it.
A lack of variety, maybe.
Yeah, and just like I'm too. It's I got to be set free to produce something that's valid. And I can't be constrained. And it's probably why I've become more humble every record we put out, and become more thankful, because the reality is, if this didn't happen, I don't know what would have,
Yeah,
and,
that's very heavy introspection, and I'm glad you're sharing that, because creative-minded folks, there's always this self-doubt, right?
my guy's part of the fuel almost. Where it hinders, it kind of inspires. It depends on the day. But yeah, it's insecurity. It's feeling left out. It's feeling alienated. Putting out music or playing music is a good way to kind of veil your feelings while you're expressing them, so you can still feel confident and functional. But yeah, we're all kind of train wrecks on the inside, and I don't understand how things work in a square fashion, like at the bank or something. Like I wouldn't know how to adapt.
Well, we're thankful that you said yes to the Inner Voice back in 2002. You guys start off in Texas,
Yeah,
like a month
Dallas.
from this Friday, and then you end up in Paris
At some point.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah, I think what you see online, just the dots don't connect really. So this tour that we're doing now will take us kind of across the country and then back to the East Coast. And then I think we do end up in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we'll continue again. We'll probably do another lap around the States. This is all because the record doesn't come out till July. So,
right. Are you guys going to be able to play much from the new record this first leg before the record comes out?
I think we usually don't kind of do that much, because nobody really gets to know the music, and I think, as much as I like to play the whole record, from a personal standpoint, like, you're just revving up, man. Literally this tour is like, it's going to take us a third year, to use the analogy. We're not going to do a ton straight out of the box. It's got to wait. You got to build up. So giving people like a taste of the record and a reminder of what they fucking love is how we'll start out. So I think 3 songs max from the new record, probably 2.
My guess is Marauder will probably do what other record labels have been doing, like Red Hot Chili Peppers did. They just introduced 2 songs off their record that's coming out in April. They drop it, in a couple weeks later, they drop another one. So
that's a new trend.
Yeah,
that's exactly what's happening.
People will get a little taste of the new stuff. I really wasn't as keen on that first Chili Peppers song, but the whole idea was they're going on tour soon. They want to say, okay, we're getting ready. You guys get a little nibble on this.
Right.
And then that gives them carte blanche to offer it up live, work through it live, but then share in what they just spent, like you guys, the last year plus, almost 2 years, putting together. Right.
Yeah.
And they've been together since 1984. So they've got to be excited. Right. So with the 20th anniversary of the first Interpol record, I'm sure there's going to be some butterflies and giddiness and excitement and high fives, and the crew's going to be equally excited to be back together as the band is. And
they've already been talking to, like, kind of group texting each other, getting ready. I think everybody's really excited because not much has been happening.
Yeah, and it wasn't just an Interpol sabbatical; it was the whole musical world sabbatical.
Yeah,
you timed it well, though. Good on you.
Yeah.
There was something like our manager, being a manager, and it's kind of weird to look at it this way, but this is what he does. This is what makes him a good manager. And he worked for the company Red Light, and Red Light's owned by a guy who's been in the touring business for a long time. And so it really is artist friendly management. Like, they really are very creative and kind of, don't always take the beaten path. But this guy has been in the the president of Red Light has been in the touring industry for decades. So he was really keyed in to how promoters are getting their information, where it's coming from, because people are losing their shit. I mean, we're talking like billions of dollars are going to be lost because of grand scale live performance. So I think we had a really good, like a solid finger on, or a solid pulse reading to project as far as you can what's going to be able to happen. And he was like, our manager James was like, when you can finally get back out and play for people, and what you play for people is going to resonate so massively because of what we're going to be at the end of. And on one hand, I don't want to hear it, but then on the other hand, I'm like, he might be right. It doesn't sound, it's not as base. It's like, we're going to make millions of dollars off of this because we're going to capitalize on, it's definitely more on, it's just good timing. And, what you're going to deliver to your audience is going to be resonating with them. And the audience is going to be way more elated than ever. I mean, just think of all the people who had no recourse in life because they were working hourly jobs or whatever, delivering pizza. I always talk about that one because I did it for so long. The service industry,
I was in a coffee shop the whole time. It was a wild experience.
Yeah, I mean, but the period where they closed down, it's just pretty scary. But just to hear, realizing his perspective was, way more on, not what our financial take will be, but like the emotional landscape, and Interpol being Interpol. So that was kind of an interesting kind of light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, well, if I do trust him and he's right, then this is a very good thing. So far proving to be timings is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some upbeat Interpol music as well.
There is some upbeat songs on there.
The pacing of upbeat with what, because like you said, the opportunity for Interpol to inspire, of course, you're going to have deep and heavy, which inspires people, right? Just like what you guys did after 9/11, it inspired a lot of people with the first record. And this is 20 years later, here we are. Who could have predicted 9/11 or the pandemic? And you guys this is what you're going back to, Sam, is your manager's going, looking at the big picture. People are hungry and eager, and we can deliver. Interpol has the ability to deliver, especially new record, new lease on life. So many reasons why. So you guys weren't getting burnt out. Oh, here we go again. We're on the squirrel cage of another record, rehearsal, tour, blah blah blah.
And fuck it. I'm surprised it didn't happen 10 years ago. I mean, coming from where we come from, Gary, like, you don't think long. You were punk rock. You weren't thinking like 20 years. That was for the Beatles. To have 20 years. This is going to burn out in 5.
Yeah.
And, here I am in my 50s. When I was 15, I had the audacity to say, I don't care if I die when I'm 50. It sounds right. And I look back at that, I'm going to smack his head, man.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that perspective, though. I was 15 and thought 50, and here I am, still making records.
And I discovered through Brian's podcast, you did it with the whole brain aneurysm thing. I mean, good Lord, man, that's some heavy duty stuff that you're actually here talking to us about going on tour, which is very physical, and the travel and everything else, the preparation, the mental challenge of that, the physical and what that means. And you're willing to basically jump off a moving train again.
Yeah, I have to. I mean, the physical aspect of what I do is beneficial because so many endorphins get released, and negative energy gets channeled, where I don't make an ass out of myself. I don't holler at anybody, I get to do it dynamically and it sounds good. I go to a gym now too. I've changed my habits. Probably you've been seeing me smoke this Delta 8 THC joint. I go to a gym 3 days a week, cut out a lot of carbs and kind of dirty food. But I really think, just like with anything, if you get sick, the positive mental outlook is crucial. No matter, they say that to cancer patients a lot, especially if they can't really figure out what's going on or control things, they got to make sure the patients don't get depressed because it'll just really excel the degradation, but this kind of, and I kind of too, like, I get this from my mom. It's like, I fall down and I scraped my knee when I was a kid. I brushed it off and just kept going. So even with something as big as this, like when it happened to me, I turned into like the football coach saying, get outside and fucking walk it off. Walk it the fuck off, Fogarino.
Yeah.
And I was like, can you walk this off? I don't know, but that's what I was doing. And I think this like kind of refusal to really go, oh my God, I think I had a stroke, to take care of it. I mean, I went to the hospital, but the refusal to kind of succumb to what happened is, I think, very, very crucial. I think if I caved in, and started to act mentally according to what happened,
Mm-hmm.
If I became all of a sudden just kind of caved and became feeble, maybe we wouldn't be talking. I don't know. But there's this kind of ignorance that's just like headstrong. Like, my mom had cancer. She beat it twice. The first time around, she finally said, and quote unquote, fuck this shit. I want to jump out of a plane still.
Mm-hmm.
She's like pushing 80 years old. This was like 10 years ago. And that was her motivation, which is like, fuck, I'm fucking tired of this. I'm not going to give in. Like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
She beat it. And then she got breast cancer. It was just like, fuck this again. No more, no chemo. I'm not doing chemo. And she's fine,
Wow.
And I think that's just, there's a part of that, nose to the grindstone upbringing, close to the bone, that, I am kind of a tough guy. It's just like
a tough guy in the right way.
In the right way. I'm not gonna go beat up somebody or get it. It's not about violence at all. Yeah. That's just insecurity. No, a tough guy in the sense of like, I'm not gonna let anything hold me down. Like, be it an aneurysm or not. Like, I'm just gonna do whatever I can to keep going. But that really did, another thing that was really crazy was like, okay, there's this pandemic happening. People are dying from an infection from a virus, and I go and have a fucking aneurysm. It's just kind of all weird.
Like, I'm gonna be novel in the midst of all this. I'm gonna do something else. Switch it up.
It's crazy.
How did Paul and David react when you said, dudes, I just had this brain aneurysm?
Oh, they were freaked out. I think your Brad offered to come and stay with me because I had separated with my partner at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell my family because I knew that they'd want to come down and they couldn't. So I just didn't tell them for a long time.
What month was this in 20? It
was like June.
Oh gosh, that was the peak of uncertainty and freaking out and danger and uncertainty.
That's what I was like, it'd go to figure, I'd have to go out of my way to get sick. I had this other, all the, you know what I mean? It just felt really strange that something like that would happen.
Added some variety to the doctor's day, I'm sure. They're like, oh, thank God it's not COVID.
They're like, all the neurologists were like, I can get back to work now. Because it's all like head doctors.
I get to go in. Yes.
Yeah. They were, it was pretty intense. I mean, because it was, in my kind of, not totally blind ignorance, my refusal to cave in, I kind of forgot how serious it was. And it would be frightening to see the looks on their faces. Because they're, I wasn't going to die, but they did have to remind me that this is serious, dude. Like, your brain was bleeding,
Yeah, and how close you were to leaving the earth, and the fact that you need to like do a gut check on how to take care of yourself in several different ways. Whether you're, shucking shingles on a roof or you're banging drums in a band, it's physical. And you need to prepare to be physical again.
Yeah.
Like now, right?
Exactly. And that's, it's what led me to a personal trainer, riding my bike more, and just, nothing crazy, but just enough to, and I can feel the difference too. Just with 3 days a week, an hour a day, it just feels less impactful on like doing other things. I feel like I could toe the line like a lot further. So, and then that just builds confidence getting back out there.
Yeah. You've beaten the Grim Reaper for now, and just like your mom, right?
Yeah.
And I can see why you're pretty fired up about getting a new motorcycle. You don't have time with a young one and everything else to fiddle around with old bikes. You want to get that excitement, the adrenaline back. Right?
Yeah, totally. No, and it's just like a different perspective too. Like I don't want to. I like garages. I like the vibe, but I'm gonna be on the bike. You
Mhm.
know,
It's kind
just
of a
like
funny journey. I see a lot of even new riders go on. There's this specific type of new rider that is like, I want to get a vintage bike and I want to work on it. And I like they have, because it is a very romantic, very like there's an
totally.
emotional journey sort of aspect to it. And then they'll be in it and they're working on it and they think, oh my God, motorcycles are so tough. And then you're like, try my bike, and you put them on something that just runs
Modern
and
brakes,
yeah, it can
modern
accelerate, it
suspension.
can stop. And they're
Dude.
like, I had no idea. And you're like, sweetie,
Oh yeah,
please, like
that's
join
right,
us,
honey.
join the
Yeah,
living.
that's it's such a marked difference. You just feel like there's this like you got to earn your stripes, or that whole like romantic knowledge of
Mhm.
how cool this is going to be. And yeah,
I make a point to sort of push against that in a positive way. Like if I'm talking to people and trying to encourage them to try motorcycling, in everything I do, I try to exude that, like, be upfront about the stuff I don't know, be humble about it, be excited at all times, and kind of like, oh yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I tried this. Cause I think whether it's life advice or motorcycle stuff, I never want to tell people what to do. But
no,
if I can help them skip a couple steps,
Yeah.
and if I can save them like a year of stress, that's
yeah,
my goal, where I'm just like, try as many bikes as you can, because you'll figure out really quickly doing that
But
there's something
you
for
don't want to
you,
color
you know?
you don't want to burst their bubble about getting a
Yeah, like,
CB750.
that's great.
no,
Just know
no.
Let them,
that
let them work
it's
through it.
gonna be heavy. It's gonna do this, and you'll have to learn how to work on it because it's gonna
Well, if
be
you
less
live
reliable.
where we do, I mean, I am one of those guys, Sam, that rides his bike to work every day,
Right.
and it's 30 miles each way, and I love it. I get to work and I'm fired up, and I'm one of the oldest guys in our building, and I've got more energy than everyone combined. I just love it, and I think we've had 3 classic motorcycles in the last 22 years, and they're great, but we don't have them anymore because you really can't ride them.
No,
And we
no.
like going through rubber and chains and fluid and brake pads like no one's business, because that means we're riding.
Yeah,
And I think this household combined, since we've gotten back into it in 2008 years ago, I bet you this household has put a couple 100,000 miles on. I'm not kidding. You know, we don't drive a car much. We don't have to.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing that excites me is that would be reduced. You know, that the little jaunts I take, a few
Mhm.
miles, there'd be no reason to get in the car.
Yeah. With gas the way it is. I mean, we're up to
I eat it.
6.30 a gallon for premium.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a Kia Stinger, so
I have a Kia Soul.
you do.
Perfect.
I love Kias, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
love really
Pretty
solid.
rad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good for $65 to fill up my tank.
Yeah,
Oh,
Premium,
yeah,
$65.
it's rough.
$70. So it was $70.
yeah.
$70. Jesus. You mean
And
even
yeah.
with a bike now, even if it goes up to $10 a gallon, you're just never, it's never
Yeah.
going to be for, I don't want to second guess anybody's financial situation, but it's
It
never
won't
going to
break
be
you the
that
same
crazy.
way,
It won't
right?
break you. It'll be a little bit of a burden, but like $20 is not 70.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Our problem is we have 8 motorcycles in the garage right now.
A couple are on the way out.
Yeah, there's plans. There's plans
a
to get rid of a couple,
the
but
ice
when
flows shift and the tectonic plates of our garage move around a decent amount. We're at one of those points.
Sam, we used to be the bicycle family because we're in the bicycle industry for 24 years. Owned a bike shop, had our own brand. I was a journalist, blah blah blah. So the garage, when we first moved out here, in about 3 years' time, there were about 32 bicycles.
Wow.
Hanging from the rafters everywhere. Henri rode his fixed gear around. We had 3 tandems. Jean still rides her fixed gear to work because she's 2.1 miles away from the coffee shop she runs. And like I said, I blame Jean because she's like, we should get it. Her famous words, she looks at me looking on Craigslist and she's caught me red-handed. Sam, I'd probably say 95% of the time she'll go, we should go look at it.
Yeah.
And that's code for I've got the cash.
It usually swaps out, right? We usually get something.
Yeah. And we always
And then
get something.
Well, there's always one bike that's kind of lingering and we're
Yeah.
not riding it as much. And when we all
Right.
kind of get real, we're like, either it's too similar to another bike or it's just not fun to ride or it's
Or it
not
was a
what we
pipe dream that
expected.
never really materialized. Like,
But even
eh.
those
Yeah.
are like those lessons you learn where you're like, man, I really want to get this kind of bike. And you get it and you kind of go, I really thought I wanted this kind of bike.
Well, you're good for taking your time, Sam, and really, well, you're kind of forced to,
Yeah.
But thinking
Yeah.
about, you know what, which bike do I want to enjoy? Which bike do I want to enjoy being seen on? Which bike that will take me places? You know, if you're going to be going around the state or across the country, that kind of dictates which
It
bike
dictates,
to get.
and like having, like, if I did commit to the BMW, then I could make that decision on the fly as
Yeah.
long as I prepare, because I could go a few hundred miles on that, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to a scrambler, even brand new. Like, nah, man, you know, you're not going to do more than 25 miles without taking a break, because it's going to hurt your ass. It's just not going to
Yeah,
be.
we've tried a bunch of scramblers, and the
And
desert
a
sled is
couple
cool.
Corbin seats later where
Yeah.
if I have to go a far away, I've got the bike for it, which most of the time I don't need to, but most of the time I'm on a 2020 Chinese 250 that I got brand new, and it was like a little less than 3,000, and I stripped the paint off and did a bunch of things to it because I wanted a bike that I could just swing a leg over and have fun with.
Yeah.
And then you also
Mhm.
have the bike that can get places, but that's the balance I reach, where I was like, oh, this is my most days and this is my sometimes, and it just has worked for me. And then if I get, you know, antsy and want to ride something else, I've got the rest of the stable to tap into. But
Yeah.
No
it
kidding,
really
yeah.
is, it's based on what you want to do, right? And I think that's something I tell people
That's
getting
kinda
a first
cool.
bike. I'm like,
That's
don't.
like that's a well-equipped recording studio with like having a bunch of different microphones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're just set to record anything. So what's your mood today?
Hmm.
You're just going to go to the store, you know, maybe kind of go the long route, you know, for a little
Mhm.
spin, get on the 250,
Hmm.
you know. But if you're going to go kind of out of the county, head north into the country,
gosh.
yeah, you have a choice. That's cool. I tried to do that to a degree, to a smaller extent, because when I got back into I was into bikes when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and you know, never had anything above an 80cc bike that ran for 2 days, you know. And then, I mean, it was years later. A therapist said, you know, what do you like doing? I was like, you know, I really never lost my affinity for motorcycles. And she's like, well, do it. And it's like, oh God, the doctor said, go get
Yeah.
a
You got
you
permission.
just got a prescription for
I got a
motorcycles.
as my prescription. So I thought, living in North Georgia, I'm going to get a dirt bike and hit these cool trails out here. So I bought this really 70s MR 175. It was supposed to be, you know, an enduro, and it's not. It's a fucking CR with a headlight and a tail light.
Hmm.
That thing terrified me riding through a trail system, you know, because you can't just go, you can't keep it at 25 miles an hour. Like, you just got to keep gunning that thing.
Mhm.
And it was just, you know, it was a 2-stroke. That was my first mistake, because I kind of wanted to just kind of go through the trail. I didn't want to challenge myself. I wanted to just get lost and just, you know, hit third gear if you're lucky, and just not worry about, you know, fouling the fucking carburetor, you know. And this thing was just like, it was like on steroids. It was this little bike on steroids, and it would
Two-strokes are
fly from.
crazy.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
power
this thing,
band, all
I
of a
mean,
sudden
it's like
you hit that.
oh my God, it's crazy. It's crazy, and it was so light too
Mhm.
that it would literally fly from under my legs, like going up a hill or something. And I just didn't know how to. Like, I'm not a 2-stroke guy. I wasn't smooth with like the whole concept of just, you know, never letting go of the throttle. You know, it was weird to me, and I wanted the choice to take it down to second gear to take a look at my surroundings.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, well, you know, I need to get something else that I could ride on the street, you know, because now the bug has bitten me, and then maybe take on the trails, you know. But I don't need to get. If I want to get crazy, I can get on this thing, because eventually I did kind of figure out a way to ride it properly, and it was fun. But it did inspire me to do crazy things. So
Yeah.
it was better just to get, because I found myself jumping because it just would.
Because you can, yeah.
Because you can.
Yeah, you can. So
That's
you
me in
do.
sport bikes. Is I didn't think I liked them because a lot of them I went on the ergonomics. I'd end up all this weight on my hands, and then doing the garage, I ended up fixing a bunch of sport bikes, and you have to test ride each one. And then there was a day where there was like a 650 triple, and the tank was molded in this way, and you kind of gripped it almost like a horse, and there was just no weight on your hands. And that kind of like set me free. And all of a sudden I'm like going like 50 on a back street because you can.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun, but I'm like, holy shit. If this was every single day, I'd get into trouble.
Yeah.
The XT 500, you know, was mint, and I slammed it into a tree. And it was just because it could have happened. You know, I just gave it a little too much gas coming out of first gear, and then the wheel goes up like 3 inches, and there's a control. That's it. Yeah. And it, you know, I wasn't trying to be funny or cool. It was just, you know, I just wasn't thinking. It was just kind of hit it too hard. And I mean, I got banged up pretty good. I didn't break anything. But after that, it was like, that bike was fucking mint. It's like 79. It's like near showroom condition. And that's it. You know, it has a new front end because it was totaled, you know?
I'm a bit terrified of riding off road. I mean, we used to mountain bike quite a bit, and that was good. But the only time I ever crashed on a bicycle was mountain biking because the rocks move, the trees jump out at you.
Yeah,
and
vectors and axes.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
No idea existed, and all of a sudden,
yeah, you're not on a grid. Yeah,
yeah.
But I like having a pseudo adventure bike. I have a DR 650.
That's a great bike,
and that's a great bike that allows you to, if you have mixed use tires, you can go anywhere. I don't really go off road a whole lot, but I have a few times this year, and I kind of dig it. But that loosey goosey feeling of that deeper gravel, I start puckering up a little bit, and then the shoulders get sore, and then I don't really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I found that's how it happened for me. It like on nice packed dirt, like taking a dusty
fire roads or something.
Yeah, you know, auxiliary roads or whatever. Yeah, totally. That's fun. Because it's you still feel grounded and solid, and it is when you get into that looser dirt and rocks and stuff. That's when I was like, I can't have fun. It's just going by too fast, and there's too many variables.
Yeah, the variables freak me out.
Yeah, and I realized that like a straight line is beautiful. Yeah, on a long road.
Like, I love riding in the suburbs. I'll blast around on the 250 just to get my head straight and kind of reset my mood sometimes, and I just go around near the old high school and up into the hills near here, and it's beautiful.
That's why it's pretty scenic around here too, and it's not like at a certain point in time the traffic is reduced greatly, and there's not a lot of opportunity for people just to pop out, like just to jump on, you know, kind of cut you off. Like there's long straightaways, and I think it's a good culture around here too, with people on bikes, like being, you know, not tailgating them, and
people are more aware,
being more aware of realizing their vulnerability. I know I will be defensive for a motorcycle.
Yeah.
When I'm around, like I'll make sure that people can't tailgate it. Do everything I can to block people from being assholes.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of fun.
It is kind of fun. Yeah, I know.
Cool. Well, Sammy, thanks so much for the conversation. I knew it'd be free flowing and fun, and I'm glad you had the amount of time you had today. So,
oh yeah, it was perfect.
Fun Indeed. Stuff. Well, enjoy.
All right, guys.
The remainder of your day, Sam. As always, a real pleasure.
Likewise, good to talk to you, Henri. I love saying your name. Makes me feel very cultured,
sophisticated.
Yes.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, we'll be talking.
We shall.
Definitely.
Thanks again.
All right. See you, boys. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Motorcycles Are Drugs. We've been talking with Sam Fogarino, drummer for rock band Interpol, whose new album, The Other Side of Make Believe, is out July 15th on Marauder Records. Their tour kicks off April 25th in Texas, and 2 singles with accompanying music videos are out now. If motorcycles are drugs for you, or if you just enjoy good conversation with rad people, head to our website that's linked in the show notes, or check us out on Instagram @motorcyclesardrugs. Talk to you next time.